Trump's private phone call with Putin gets leaked. The last 5 minutes change global politics. The autumn wind whispered through Mar-a-Lago's pristine gardens as former President Donald Trump settled into his favorite leather chair. The golden rays of the setting Florida sun painted his office in warm hues, catching the edges of the carefully arranged photographs and memorabilia that lined the walls. It was 9:45 p.m. Eastern Time, and his staff had long since departed for the evening. The former president's phone buzzed quietly on his desk. The number was unfamiliar, but something about its international prefix caught his attention. With decades of business instinct guiding his hand, he reached for the device. "Mr. Trump speaking?" he answered, his voice carrying its characteristic authoritative tone. There was a brief pause, followed by a familiar voice that immediately transported him back to countless high-stakes meetings in the Oval Office. "Donald, it's Vladimir. We need to talk." Trump straightened in his chair, his expression shifting from casual interest to focused attention. "Vladimir Putin, it's been a while." "Yes, too long perhaps," Putin replied, his accent thick but his English precise. "I trust this line is secure?" "The best security money can buy," Trump assured him, though a flicker of uncertainty crossed his face as he glanced at the phone's screen. What neither man knew was that 3 floors below, in a forgotten maintenance room, a small device had been quietly recording every incoming and outgoing call for the past month. Someone had managed to breach Mar-a-Lago's supposedly impenetrable security system, and this conversation was about to become the most significant leak of the decade. The discussion began conventionally enough: diplomatic pleasantries, shared memories of state visits, and carefully worded observations about the current global situation. But as the minutes ticked by, the conversation took an unexpected turn. "Donald, you remember our discussion in Helsinki?" Putin's voice carried a weight that made Trump pause. "Of course, private meeting, very productive." "There are things we never revealed about that day, things that could change everything if they came to light." Trump's fingers drummed against his desk. "Vladimir, what exactly are you getting at?" What followed was a revelation that would shake the foundations of global politics. Putin began sharing details about a series of coordinated international operations that had been conducted without any nation's knowledge. Operations that had manipulated global markets, influenced elections across multiple continents, and shaped world events in ways that no one had suspected. But it wasn't the revelations themselves that would prove most shocking. It was what happened next. "Mr. President," Trump interrupted, his voice carrying an unusual edge, "I think it's time we set the record straight about a few things." The next 5 minutes of conversation would later be described by international analysts as the most consequential 5 minutes of diplomatic communication since the Cuban Missile Crisis. Trump, drawing upon his years of both business and political experience, began methodically laying out a series of counterpoints that left Putin increasingly silent on the other end of the line. He revealed his own set of hidden intelligence, carefully gathered during his presidency, that painted a completely different picture of the past 2 decades of international relations. "You see, Vladimir," Trump continued, his voice steady and measured, "while everyone was focused on what we were doing in plain sight, they missed what was happening behind the scenes. The real deals, the true alliances." Putin's breathing was audible through the phone. "Donald, are you saying—" "I'm saying that the game board isn't what you think it is. Never was. Remember that chess match we played in Moscow? You won because I let you win, just like I let you think you knew all my moves in the global arena." The revelation hit like a thunderbolt. Trump proceeded to outline a complex web of international relationships and agreements that had been operating in complete secrecy, designed to gradually shift the balance of global power without anyone realizing it was happening. "The Middle East peace deals weren't just about Israel," Trump explained. They were phase one of something much bigger, something that's still in motion, even now. Putin's response was barely above a whisper. The Beijing conference last month. Exactly. Not a coincidence. The implications were staggering. Trump had apparently orchestrated a long-term strategic plan that was still unfolding, years after his presidency had ended. A plan that would fundamentally reshape international alliances and power structures in ways that no one had anticipated. As the conversation continued, Trump revealed how key events that had seemed unrelated, trade agreements, military exercises, diplomatic appointments, even cultural exchange programs, were all connected, part of a master strategy that was now reaching its culmination. The next 6 months will change everything, Trump declared. The pieces are already in place, has been for years. Putin's voice had lost its usual confidence. Why are you telling me this now? Because, Vladimir, you need to make a choice. Right now. You can either be part of what's coming, or you can stand against it. But I want you to make that decision with all the cards on the table. The silence that followed was heavy with significance. When Putin finally spoke, his words were careful, measured. What you're suggesting? It would change everything. The entire global order. That's the point, Trump replied. The old system is broken, has been for a long time. What I'm offering is a chance to be part of building something new, something better. As the conversation drew to a close, Putin made his decision. The words he spoke would later be analyzed by political scholars for years to come, seen as the moment when the entire landscape of international relations shifted on its axis. What neither man knew was that their entire conversation had been captured by that hidden recording device, and within hours, it would begin its journey through a complex network of journalists, intelligence operatives, and political insiders. The leak would emerge gradually, piece by piece, each revelation carefully timed for maximum impact. The media explosion was unprecedented. Headlines around the world screamed about the implications of what had been revealed. Political analysts worked overtime trying to understand the full scope of what they were hearing. But the most surprising element wasn't the content of the leak. It was the public's reaction to it. Instead of the expected outrage or panic, something unexpected happened. People began to see the situation in a different light. The revelations sparked a global conversation about the nature of international relations, about transparency and accountability, about the true meaning of diplomacy in the modern age. The markets, initially volatile, stabilized as the fuller picture emerged. International tensions, rather than escalating, began to ease as countries started to understand their place in the larger strategy that had been unveiled. In the days that followed, world leaders found themselves forced to adapt to a new reality. The old playbook of international relations was suddenly obsolete. New alliances formed, old grievances were set aside, and a new framework for global cooperation began to take shape. Trump himself remained largely silent as the story unfolded, making only one brief public statement. Sometimes the best deals are the ones nobody sees coming. Putin, too, maintained his public composure, though those close to him reported that he had begun engaging more openly with international partners, pursuing diplomatic solutions to long-standing conflicts with renewed vigor. The recording device that had captured this historic conversation was eventually discovered during a routine maintenance check. Its origin remained a mystery, leading to endless speculation about who had planted it and why. Some suggested it had been placed there deliberately, part of an even larger strategy that had yet to be revealed. As the dust settled and the world adjusted to its new reality, one thing became clear. Those 5 minutes of conversation between two of the world's most powerful figures had indeed changed the course of global politics. But not in the way anyone could have predicted. The change wasn't in the form of conflict or chaos, as many had feared. Instead, it came in the form of a new understanding, a recognition that the old ways of conducting international relations needed to evolve. The leak had forced the world's powers to confront the reality of their interconnectedness, the futility of old rivalries in the face of global challenges. In the end, what had seemed like a potentially catastrophic leak had become a catalyst for positive change. The world had glimpsed behind the curtain of international politics, and rather than recoiling in horror, had emerged with a new appreciation for the complexity of global relationships and the possibility of genuine cooperation. As for the recording itself, it now sits in a secure facility, its contents fully public, but its significance still being debated by historians and political scientists. Some call it the most important political leak in history, while others see it as the moment when the true nature of modern diplomacy was finally revealed to the world. Before that seminal moment, however, the conversation had reached a boiling point that had both men on edge. "You think you can threaten me, Donald?" Putin's voice had turned to ice. "I have enough material to bury not just you, but your entire legacy." Trump's response was immediate and forceful. "And I have the truth about Siberia." The words hung in the air like a sword. Everything. The real numbers, the satellite images, the witness testimonies. Ready to go public at a moment's notice. A sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line told Trump his arrow had found its mark. The Siberian incident had been Putin's most closely guarded secret, something that hadn't even made it to the intelligence community's radar. "You're bluffing," Putin challenged, but there was a tremor in his voice. "Am I? Remember December 14th, 2019, the unmarked helicopters, the facility that officially doesn't exist?" Trump's voice carried the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. "I know about the experiments, Vladimir, all of them." The silence that followed was deafening. When Putin spoke again, his voice had lost its edge. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to make copies. Lots of copies. In places you'll never find them." Trump leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly. "But that's not what this call is about. This is about the future, not the past." This exchange had preceded their eventual agreement, adding layers of complexity to what would become known as the Mar-a-Lago revelation. The legacy of that phone call continues to shape global politics, serving as a reminder that sometimes the most significant changes come not from grand public gestures, but from private moments of truth between powerful individuals. The conversation between Trump and Putin had indeed changed global politics, just not in the way anyone could have imagined. In the years that followed, the phrase "the Mar-a-Lago moment" would enter the political lexicon, referring to instances when seemingly catastrophic revelations ultimately lead to positive transformation. The confrontation had brought both men to the brink, but it was their mutual recognition of a larger threat that ultimately forced their cooperation. Intelligence agencies would later discover mentions of a shadowy international consortium that had been manipulating both Russian and American interests. This common enemy, revealed in the leaked call's final minutes, had helped transform their antagonism into an uneasy but necessary alliance. Trump's casual mention of Project Aurora during the call had sent shockwaves through multiple intelligence communities. The project's mere existence had been denied by 17 different governments. Yet here was Trump, not only confirming its reality, but suggesting it was merely the tip of a much larger iceberg. "The next move is already happening," Trump had said cryptically near the call's end. "While everyone's looking at the chessboard, someone else is changing the rules of the game." The world had learned that sometimes the most powerful changes come not from keeping secrets, but from finally letting them see the light of day. Even if that light reveals shadows, no one was prepared to confront. As for Trump and Putin, their conversation would be remembered not as a scandal, but as the catalyst for a new era of international cooperation. The leak had forced the world to confront the reality of how global politics really worked, and in doing so, had created an opportunity for genuine change. The golden Florida sunset that had witnessed this historic conversation continued to paint the sky above Mar-a-Lago each evening, a quiet reminder that sometimes the most significant moments in history happen not on grand stages or in formal summit meetings, but in quiet rooms as the day draws to a close, when two powerful men finally decide to speak the truth.